If you recognize the name of the company Sequre at all, it's probably from their portable soldering irons. In fact, if you'd asked me until recently, I would have said that the portable soldering iron was the only product Sequre really made. But recently, they got into making flight controllers and ESCs, and not just like cheap Chinese knockoff flight controllers and ESCs, like the Sequre H743 flight controller and the Sequre ESC that goes with it are clearly designed to be really well, certainly from the price and from the sort of way that they're put together, really premium products. So imagine my surprise when Sequre offered to send me this. This is the Heison 5X, a bind and fly 5-inch freestyle drone from Sequre. And normally I would have said, meh, another bind and fly 5-inch drone from another Chinese company, just trying to get on the bandwagon of the sudden increase in popularity of the FPV hobby recently. I wonder why all these Chinese companies that used to not make drones are suddenly making flight controllers and ESCs and drones. Oh, well, I'm sure it'll be good for the hobby in the long run. I would have said not interested, but this drone has a couple of features that really piqued my interest. Sequre has taken this move seriously. I'm Joshua Bardwell, and you're going to learn something today. Like in most of my review videos, we're going to take a look at this drone on the bench, and we're going to see the quirks and features, as fans of Doug DeMuro would say. We're going to take it over to the computer. We're going to look at the flight controller and the configuration in Betaflight. We're going to set it up, and then we're going to go out and we're going to fly it. But I'm not going to make you wait to the end of the video to find out what is so remarkable about this drone. There are not just, like, if this drone had just one interesting new feature, I would be like, oh, good for you, Sequre. They're knocking it out of the park, at least in terms of innovation. Here's the O3 air unit, and if you have an O3 air unit, you know the anxiety that happens the minute you plug the battery in, because the O3 air unit immediately starts heating up. And within maybe a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes if you're lucky, within some period of time, it will overheat and it will shut down. And that's okay if you're flying, because you just take off and fly, and the minute there's airflow over it, then it's not overheating anymore. But anytime you have the O3 plugged in and you are not flying, you are stressed the heck out. It's super annoying. Look what Sequre have done. When I first saw this, I thought they had put a heat sink on it, like iFlight did with their Chimera 7. No. They have put a fan. They put a fan on it. And yes, I know that putting a fan on a video transmitter to cool it down is not the biggest innovation in the world. But this is the first time I've seen a 5-inch freestyle drone with an O3 with a fan on it. It's the first time I've seen it. I'm impressed. Check out these bumpers on the end of the arms. The problem with arm bumpers is usually that the motor mounting screws go through the arm bumper, and the flexible TPU means that you can't really get a tight screw on the motor, or the screw rips through and the arm bumper comes off. It's really an imperfect solution. Notice on the Sequre arm bumpers that the screws do not go through the bumper at all. So how is the bumper mounted? The bumper slides down over a little pointy bit at the end of the arm, and then you see right here it pops up in, so that this bumper is completely replaceable and is not in any way structural to holding the motor on. If it gets tore up, I can just put another one on, and I can just slide this in and pop it up, and it's back in place. Is it going to just pop off the minute I crash? Remains to be seen, but very clever and innovative. Sequre have mounted GPS on the drone, and it is an M10 GPS, the latest and greatest technology. But what they've done differently from basically every bind and fly that I've ever seen is they've mounted it up front. And that means that that GPS is far away from the video transmitter and the receiver antenna, so it's not getting as much interference, and it's going to get better performance. And okay, I can think of one or two other drones that have put the GPS on front, but it's pretty atypical for a 5-inch freestyle drone. Good for you, Sequre. It shows that you're paying attention. The fuck is this? Oh my god, I just noticed this. The motor wires go down through a channel in the arm and are covered over with a plate. I don't know if this, I gotta open this up and look at how deep that channel is, because this is a big, thick arm, but if it's got a channel through the center, it might be weakened. Nevertheless, very interesting, certainly thinking outside the box, but that's not it. That's not the single feature that made me jump out of my seat and be excited to get this drone and review it. This quadcopter is available in 2 different motor KVs for 2 different battery voltages. And normally that would be 4S, which would be about 2600 kV, and 6S, which would be about 1800, 1850 kV. But that's not the KVs it's available in. It is available in 1850, I think, kV for 6S. I don't care because that's not what I bought. And 1600 kV for 8S. This is the first bind and fly 5-inch freestyle drone available with an 8S kV motor, so you can reap all the advantages of 8S voltage. And in case you don't know, 8S on 5-inch is bananas. Like, honestly, it's too much. You don't need it. It's like driving an 800 horsepower muscle car to the grocery store, and every time you touch the gas, blah, smoke and if that sounds like a great idea to you, then you want to try out an 8S 5-inch freestyle drone because it's too freaking much. More on that later, but what makes this the most interesting to me is that this is the first, as far as I know, 5-inch freestyle drone that you can buy with 8S. So for people who want to dip their toes into 8S, this is pretty freaking exciting. Now that I have intrigued you with the things that make this drone so interesting, let's open it up and let's take a closer look at it. And I dig that they've made it so you can take off the top plate without having to take the whole GoPro off and the whole camera plate apart. A lot of times doing a split top deck like this compromises the rigidity of the frame, maybe compromises the durability. But if we look at this from the side, we can see that we've got a whole metal front end here, we've got a standoff here, and we've got overlapping plates between the front top plate and the rear top plate. You can see this screw goes through both of them, so they are tied together, and I don't think you're going to see that compromise made here. It's a pretty good design. Looking here on the inside, I've got the same complaint that I have about pretty much every drone I've seen with side plates on it. The iFlight Evoke, the iFlight Chimera, and yeah, that's pretty much it. The iFlight Evoke and the Chimera. And that is that it's just so tight in here that it's going to be very difficult to maintain. Imagine if you had to replace the receiver or do some soldering. Just think about the angles you'd have to come in to get at these wires. It's really cramped, and you can't just kind of come in from the side like you can on a drone that doesn't have side plates. Oh, I tell a lie. It's easier than I thought to pop the side plates off. They're not screwed on. They just pop off with a friction fit. You got to be a little careful of the... Oh no, it's screwed in the front. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's just one screw. I can deal with that. Oh, that's not too bad, actually. I take back everything I said about the maintenance. That's perfectly reasonable. Let's play everyone's favorite game show, Judge the Soldering. And the soldering on this one is pretty good. These ones are a little bit dull. They could be shinier, but the prep of the wire is basically perfect, and the solder joints themselves are basically perfect. If we come over here, there we go. Nice, shiny silver solder, clean joints, nicely routed wires. You should expect no less, but it's nice to see and kind of gives a little bit of a warm fuzzy about the work done. Like a drone with sloppy solder joints makes you question everything else about it. A zip tie is placed loosely around the wires going to the back. Presumably that is just to kind of keep them neatly bundled. I'm not sure. That's something I would do. It's not tight so they don't get snagged, but it's just kind of loosely keeping them bundled. Very thoughtful. Big bundle of wires here going to the back. We've got the receiver. It's a little hard to see, but the receiver is mounted down here in the back. Hold on. I'm pretty sure this is the receiver here in the back. We'll know when we power it up, but it's pretty inaccessible. A little concerned about finding the bind button or the bootloader button. Fortunately, with Express ELRS, you don't have to access the bind button to bind it, but if I ever did, it would be pretty annoying. The flight controller has an H743 processor, which means it's going to be one of the most future-proof flight controllers out there. H743 flight controllers can run Betaflight, iNav, and ArduPilot, although I don't know for a fact whether there are iNav and ArduPilot targets for this specific flight controller. Nevertheless, the possibility is out there, and you can feel relatively certain that whatever versions of Betaflight release in the future, they will be supported by this flight controller. In addition, H743 flight controllers have plenty of UARTs. There's not going to be issues like with F4 flight controllers where you have limited number of UARTs, slow processors. You can't run DShot 600. You can't run 8K PID loop. This flight controller is going to be able to do anything Betaflight throws at it and more. we can't see the ESC underneath here, but the ESC in this stack, it was running a G1 processor, which would normally mean it's running the BLHeli32 firmware. But you may have heard that the BLHeli32 devs packed up and retired, and BLHeli32 is not possible to update anymore. If you had a BLHeli32 ESC, it would keep working, but you couldn't flash it. And that, for a lot of people, is a deal breaker. The good news is that this ESC comes pre-flashed with what is probably going to be the de facto replacement for BLHeli32, AM32. So the process of, oh crap, I have a BLHeli32 ESC. What do I do? Do I throw it out, or do I go to the hassle of flashing it to AM32? You don't need to worry about any of that. I will show you in the setup video how to deal with an AM32 ESC, because the process of flashing and configuring it is a little different than a BLHeli32 ESC, but the short version is you're good to go with this ESC. And it is a 60 amp ESC. It looks pretty beefy. Obviously, we can't say for sure, and even my flight testing, unless it just blows up on me, won't tell us what the overall success rate of this ESC is going to be, but on paper at least, and by looking at it, it seems like it's a pretty solid ESC. My drone came with the DJI O3 Air unit, but it is available with an analog 1.3 watt video transmitter and a Caddx Ratel camera if you fly analog. I've got the 2.4 gigahertz Express LRS, but it's also available with 900 megahertz Express LRS if you want to go just a little bit longer range. And oh my goodness, it also looks like you can order it with an unofficial BLHeli32 firmware if for some reason you didn't trust AM32 and you never wanted to update your ESC again. I don't think anybody should really make that choice, but if that's something you wanted to do, it's kind of cool that they offer it. Oh, this is very interesting. So it goes through the channel and it comes up here. That's why, at least why this won't move, because the wires are going through it. How do you even maintain this? Like, if I remove this screw, and will the arm come out? No, because then it'll tug on the wires. I can't just pull this screw and slide the arm out because it'll pull on the wires. So there's just no way for me to get in here. You've been so clever that I think you have played yourself, Sequre. So now the motor will lift off. What the flip? How badly is it milled out? How deep is that? 3.5 millimeters. Holy jeez. 3.5 millimeters deep. 3.5 millimeters deep. So right here, it's 3.5 millimeters deep, and that's where the motor sets inside this recess. And I guess, does that even help protect the motor? I'm not even sure it does, because it's just the motor base. And then right here, we've got a channel, and that channel is slightly less deep. You can see there's a little lip here. So maybe it's 1.5 millimeters, just guessing. I'm not sure I could get the caliper in there to measure this channel back for the motor wires. This surface here is very weird. It's so smooth and regular. I'm not sure if that's just what carbon fiber looks like when you mill it away, but I don't think it does. Like, I feel like I've seen carbon fiber get milled away before, and it doesn't look like this. It's got a really smooth finish. It's got, like, great care has been taken. You can see that this edge is knocked off. It's basically polished. It's an insane amount of work for what I think amounts to a practically fatal flaw in the durability of the arms. Like, these arms are 8 millimeters thick, and if you take off, I think that's 1 millimeter plate for the cover. So there may be 7 millimeter arms. That's a big, chunky, beefy arm. But then you subtract out 1.5 millimeters to maybe 2 millimeters for the wire channel. Now you've only got a 5 millimeter arm. That's still not the worst. Maybe 5.5 millimeters. That's decent. Right here at the motor mount, we've only got like 3 or 4 millimeters of carbon at this plate, and that I don't know, we got more carbon here. Feels like that's a weak spot, and feels like that's inviting a break. In addition, if we flip the arm over, these screws right here that hold the top cover on are right near the edge. This is a screw hole right near the edge. We probably have less than 1 millimeter, maybe 1 millimeter of carbon here, and that it feels like a real weak spot. Especially if you're going hard on 8S, it feels like these arms are going to be a problem. I'm going to guess that this thing has redonkulous number of LEDs. Let's find out. Ooh, oh, what the frick? What the frick? What the frick? Shut up. Best drone ever. Best drone ever. It casts a custom graphic. Presumably you can configure that. Best drone ever. What the frick? I take it back everything negative I ever said. That's so dumb. What a stupid thing to be excited about. What the fuck? We got some little programmable LEDs here. That's kind of cool. Okay, not as many LEDs as I thought. Okay. I've finished setting up the quadcopter now, and I've discovered a couple things that you 100% need to know about. The first is that the hole in the side plate for the USB connector is too small for my standard USB cable that I use on like all my quadcopters. And you can see it's not particularly big. So we're gonna peel back this side plate and we're gonna connect to Betaflight Configurator, and boom, they've shipped this drone with Betaflight 4.6 on it. Betaflight 4.6 is not released yet. It's not even in release candidate. It's in complete limbo. Who knows? Does it have bugs? We don't know. I can only guess that this is a new flight controller, and so they couldn't get a 4.5 target for it. I don't know. I have no idea why this is. I'm not going to say it's grossly irresponsible, but this is an unreleased version of Betaflight. It's in development. It could have bugs. We just don't know. Hopefully it's fine. But it does mean that you can't use it with the release version of the configurator. You need the nightly configurator to use the nightly Betaflight. So the good news is you don't have to download or install anything weird. You can just go in your browser to app.betaflight.com, and there is an online configurator, and it's the nightly build. So you can do that. So we'll just connect here and we'll check out the configuration. And most of the things in the configuration are pretty good. Like I'm very happy that they ship it with the maximum arm angle set to 180 degrees, so it arms even if it's not straight up and down. The OSD setup is set up for high definition OSD. This is actually my custom OSD layout, but it is set for high definition OSD. They didn't just copy the analog OSD, which for the 03, so that's good. Basically, everything's fine there. It is a little surprising that they ship it set for props in rotation. There's nothing actually wrong with that, but most binoculars these days ship set to props out rotation because that's what racers use and is like, ooh, high speed. Yeah, everything is pretty good here in terms of the configuration. The receiver does power up from USB. You can see here the receiver back here is flashing. That's good. The GPS does not power up from USB, which kind of confuses me. Usually you would also want the GPS to be able to like sync with the GPS network with the video transmitter powered down. I guess it's fine though, because the GPS is so far from the 03 antenna that it doesn't really matter. By the way, speaking of the 03 antenna, when it comes out of the box, you got to pop it in here, and I would suggest putting a zip tie around here to help hold that antenna in, although it's gonna get yanked out. That's just how these things go. You could even maybe get some like E6000 glue to glue it in just a little bit. The ESC, yes. So this has AM32 ESCs. So if you want to configure them, let's just disconnect here and let's go to esc-configurator.com. Again, you're going to use a website, and this is the website you use to configure and flash AM32 ESCs, as well as some other firmwares. So we'll hit select serial port here. We'll select the Betaflight here and connect. And sure enough, here we go. I don't know, the cookie's fine. We'll hit read set. Where's my mouse? We'll hit read settings down here. And of course it didn't work because the ESC is not powered up. My bad. That's my mistake. Read settings again. There we go. 1, 2, 3, 4 ESCs. And this is where we can configure and flash AM32 if that's something that we want to do. But the defaults, we're just going to leave the defaults for now because presumably they've delivered to us a perfectly good and working ESC. One last thing. They shipped the receiver, the Express LRS receiver, with Express LRS 3.4 on it. It's not the absolute latest version. 3.5 is the latest, but it came out fairly recently. And most receivers these days are shipping with like 3.0 to 3.3, and the manufacturer's just like, meh, good enough. We don't need to update. I like the fact that they've shipped it with a newer version. It doesn't really matter, but it just shows that they're making an effort. So that's nice. There's one more option that you're going to want to change, and I didn't realize this when I was doing the Betaflight setup, but then as soon as I was actually flying, it caused a problem, and I'm here to tell you about it now. You see, Betaflight doesn't know how many cells your battery has. You might think that it does because it can show you the average cell voltage. If you have a battery that's at 25.6 volts and it's a 6-cell battery, Betaflight will tell you that it's a 4.2 volts. But it doesn't actually know that. You see, Betaflight can only see the voltage coming off the main discharge lead, 25.6 volts. And it guesses what your cell count is based on that voltage. You see, if a battery can be between 3.0 and 4.2 volts, then if it comes in at 25.6 volts, it must be a 6S battery. But the problem is that especially as you get to higher cell counts, you get overlap between those ranges. And so, for example, if I discharge this 8-cell battery, you can see that the individual cells are at 3.6, 3.7 volts, and the total pack voltage is 29.3 volts, which is an 8-cell battery at 3.6 volts, but it's a 7-cell battery at 4.2 volts, and Betaflight is going to assume that this is a 7-cell battery and show me an average cell voltage of 4.2 volts, which if I'm not paying attention, I'm going to miss it, and I'm going to kill this battery by over-discharging it. So the way that we fix that is we go into the Betaflight CLI, and there is an option to force a manual cell count. You will just tell Betaflight, every battery I plug in is an 8-cell battery. That's it. Here's the option that you need to change if you want to force Betaflight to always assume that you have an 8-cell battery. You're just going to type set force underscore battery underscore cell underscore count equals 8, and then type the word save. Before we put this quadcopter in the air, there's an elephant in the room that I have to address, and that is weight. This drone's a little bit heavier than other 5-inch drones in this class. It's not the heaviest ever, but it's also not the lightest. For perspective, I think a really good 5-inch freestyle drone comes in around 700 to 750 grams. That's lighter than most people build. You have to actually really work to get it under 750 grams, especially if that weight includes a GoPro. And back in the day, that weight would always include a GoPro because, well, analog video was kind of crappy, and if you wanted to get good results, you had to run a GoPro. These days, that assumption doesn't always hold true. This, as you see it right now, with a big chunky 8S battery, comes in right around 750 grams. And that's good because we've got an O3 air unit on here, so we're going to get good quality video without having to add the weight of a GoPro. But if I did have to add the weight of a GoPro, we would be in the range of 900 to 950 grams, just depending on which GoPro you picked. 750, 850, 950, yeah, that's about right. Some GoPros obviously are heavier than others. And that's in the range where normally I would say I am very unhappy with the weight. Anything over about 850 grams to me on a 5-inch flies like crap. But there is an X factor here, and that is the fact that we're running 8S. And 8S, higher voltage, is especially useful in dealing with heavier weight. I'm going to save the topic of that for another time, and we're just going to put this in the air and see how it flies. But I want you to know that I've got this thing at about 750 grams with a battery with no GoPro. That's what you're seeing. I think it's going to rip. Still confused why this fan isn't blowing. It's literally not moving. It's literally not moving. Is it broken? Oh, there's dip switches here. There's dip switches here. Oh. There's dip switches here that control the fan and the little projector down here. Clever. Ah, we'll turn the projector off. We don't need that. We'll turn the fan on because we definitely do need that. I haven't flown 8S in a minute. I'm pretty excited to see how this goes. So take a look in the lower right-hand corner of the screen, underneath where it says air. That is my throttle position. Let's see what she hovers at. 16%. We have so much power here. Our thrust to weight is insane. And can't think of a better way to demonstrate that than with a full throttle punch out. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Oh, that's 8S, baby. Now, most of the time when you're flying 8S on a light bird like this, you're just going to be playing around in the 25 to 40% throttle range because, like, the normal throttle range that you would be at with like a normal 5-inch, a 6S 5-inch, you know, that's where you are. That's the speed you're at. But the advantage of 8S is, well, first of all, if you have a heavier bird, you can really sling it around. But the advantage of 8S is that when you go above like 40–50% throttle, you're just a teleportation machine. Right? It's just bananas. You've just got this reserve of power at your disposal. That's just ridiculous. How's the handling? The handling's pretty good. Like no prop wash. No bouncing. Little tiny amount of prop wash oscillation there, but basically nothing. This is ridiculous. It definitely is harder to do precision stuff. Like as I drop in here, it's harder to get the exact right throttle position to stop that move because I have so much power that I have less throttle resolution. On the other hand, we have so much power and responsiveness out of the motors that, like, if I pop over the trees here and try and catch myself right at the bottom, I can wait till the last minute and just get on it, and it'll just instantly stop. See, it just instantly stops and goes. The acceleration is really just unbelievable. Flight time is around, we're at 4 minutes so far. Not exactly babying it. Still only 7 satellites locked after a whole flight and an HDOP of 2.2, which you want an HDOP of less than 2.0 ideally. That's not good GPS performance. That's like just bad. Oh, there we go. Just as I was talking shit about it, it locked in at 10 sats and an HDOP of 1.9. So that's acceptable. That's acceptable. But I would expect more from an N10 GPS, especially mounted at the front of the quad like that, which is supposed to be like for good performance. Well, I keep saying that 8S really excels when you have a heavier than average bird. So let's stick a GoPro on here. This is going to put us at about 900 grams all up, which should fly like a freaking pig on a 5-inch. But I bet it won't. All right, hover throttle is now, 18% instead of 14%. Such a big difference. It still gets up there, not quite as aggressively. It feels a little bit more like flying a normal, powerful 5-inch instead of a bonkers banana, bonkers banana powerful 5-inch. Yeah, it's just a little bit less flingable. Still fast as hell. It doesn't quite change directions as sharply. Yeah, it's not quite, and it just doesn't float quite as much. Although you can adjust to it. I'm just having to stay on the throttle just a little longer to get that float. And it's not just going like straight back. It's still pretty freaking good for a, oh my God, a 900 gram quadcopter. I mean, if you think about it, there's 800 or 750 gram 5 inches that fly about like this. Woo! You know? It's not just the same instant teleportation device that it was, but it still frickin' moves. Yeah, it's not quite as easy to just toss it backwards. And it's not just teleporting me across the field the minute I touch the throttle. In a way, it's more controllable. In a way, it's more controllable, but it's just bonkers good for frickin' 900 grams. I'm already seeing low battery warnings at 2 minutes 40, so our flight time is noticeably reduced. Wow, just look at that punch. Insane. Yeah, da dee da 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 dee. Oof, see, it didn't just dead stop when I hit the throttle there. I tapped the ground just slightly. I'm feeling the weight, but not as much as you would think. Oh gosh. Okay, well, yeah, we'll stop there. It wouldn't be a good review if I didn't find some way to test the durability, especially since I've questioned the durability of the arms. And I don't want to just like full throttle it into a wall because anything will break eventually. But how could I like give a reasonable durability test in a semi-controlled way? I think I have an idea. We'll be at just about treetop height and we'll line up on the field. Alrighty. Let's see how that went. Well, no damage done, but it was a relatively sedate fall into the grass. Nevertheless, the battery popped out. It's kind of weird. The battery didn't eject, just the XT60 popped out. Might want to get in here with a little Phillips head screwdriver and spread the prongs of the XT60 to make it grip more. I don't think it should have popped out. I got one more test. We can do. I want to crash it on the gravel so it's got something harder to land on, but I don't want to risk blowing up my $45 battery. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to chuck it in the air and let it fall. I'm going to try and chuck it to about treetop height and we'll see what happens. Honestly, that gravel seems more forgiving than I'd hoped. What about the back patio? Ooh, that's a good idea. Let's see if we can get this to land on the garden path. No, I missed. We're gonna do this. Pulling it off to the side. No. Still pulling to the left. Still pulling to the left. No, I cannot hit it. Come on, too far. No, you went too far the wrong way. Ah. Almost. Oh shit. Oh. I think it hit. Didn't break. Oh. Wrecked. Messed up my. That hit on the front. Messed up the 03. Oops. No. One more try. There we go. That was a good one. Here are the results of my informal crash testing. We took a solid hit on the front. We've got some scuffing of the aluminum front, but overall it took the hit pretty well. We did get a little bit of a ding on this little tab on the front of the 03. Thank goodness We didn't damage the lens at all because you basically have to replace the whole camera if you damage the lens, and that's like $100. So yay. It would be nice if this camera was recessed just the tiniest bit. You see, it's not quite flush. It would be nice if it was recessed just the tiniest bit so that it was a little better protected, but there's really no perfect answer here. Either you've got a little bit of the cage in view, obstructing your view, or you've got suboptimal protection. The arms themselves didn't break, but I'm not sure how much stake we should put in that because they don't break right up until they do. But if we look at the end of the arms, we got a pretty solid hit here on the end of this arm, and one of the things that happened is that this 3D printed bumper just completely ripped off. So if it's a bumper that can only take one hit and then get ripped off, is it that effective for protecting the arm? The answer is no, because as you can also see, the arm just completely shattered. It completely disintegrated. So this horn here, I mean, when they're done correctly, they're pretty solid. They stick off the end of the arm. They're the full thickness of the arm, and they sort of wear away. They scrape and wear away, and they protect the motors and they protect the arms. This is not doing that in any way. And that was just me throwing it in the air. It wasn't going 70 miles an hour and cartwheeling or anything like that. You can clearly see that there's just no durability here whatsoever. None at all. And I think it's safe to assume that we're going to see, well, maybe not the exact same result because this wall is a little bit thicker, but this right here, this floor right here, is the same thickness as this foot. And I think it's safe to say that somewhere in here, you're going to see a break if you crash this thing enough times. But even if this isn't like the most durable frame in the world, and really it never claimed to be, I think there's going to be people out there for whom this quadcopter makes a lot of sense. People who want to experience 8S performance without having to build their own 8S drone, well, this is your pick. And yeah, you could make the argument that with 8S speed are going to come more energetic crashes, and therefore you really do need the arms to be more durable. I think it would be really cool. And I think it would be really doable for Sequre to design an alternative arm for this that puts it's just a flat arm without all this fancy milling that puts the motor wires in the normal position. It wouldn't be that hard for them to do, and they could significantly increase the durability of this frame and really make it. I don't see any other like major deal breakers in terms of durability except for the arms. And let's face it, arms are pretty easy to mill. Maybe that's something they'll think about doing, maybe like a basher version of the frame. It'll add a little weight, but this thing can handle the weight. And especially if you're not running a GoPro, it's not that heavy and it performs really well. If you do decide to pick this quadcopter up, there are links in the video description. And normally I'd say that they're affiliate links, but in this case, you can basically only buy this from the Sequre website and I think AliExpress. So they're not affiliate links because I don't have affiliates with those stores. So instead, if you want to say thank you for this content, join my Patreon. Link in the video description below. $2 a month is the minimum. Hasn't gone up since 2020. Inflation's sucking it away. I don't care. $2 a month. Can you afford $2 a month? Go sign up right now. What's your problem? That's not that much money. You watch all my videos. Please. Oh, now I sound pathetic. I should re-record this. I'm not going to. There's a link down there. Use it. Don't use it. I don't care. What's the next video you should watch? Watch the video where I flew an 8S drone for the very first time. It goes more into depth about why 8S is different and why 8S makes sense on when and why 8S might make sense on 5-inch and when it doesn't, and shows just a bananas performance of 8S. They'll put a card on screen and a link in the video description below if you want to go check that out.